Hi, I am Dana Unruh, and this is Legal Aspects of Teacher Evaluations, Module 8. Teacher Evaluations and Issue Overview was the first article that I read. Basically, the evaluation or the article referred to teacher evaluations, what they're supposed to be, and ideally what they're supposed to do. The definition they gave was teacher evaluations refer to the formal process a school uses to review and rate teachers' performance and effectiveness in the classroom. Notice it says in the classroom. It doesn't say anywhere else. Ideally, these findings for these evaluations are used to provide feedback to the teachers and guide their professional development. They're supposed to guide their professional development, not guide their pay raise, not guide whether or not they retain tenure, their professional development. These evaluations are supposed to meet or are meant to actually help our teachers. The next slide is about, or the next portion of the article was about why we evaluate teachers. There's a lot of reasons we evaluate teachers, and year to year you can actually see consistency or inconsistency of how a teacher is doing. A lot of this has to do with the fact that teachers are real people. They have real lives, they have real problems, and you can see this in their evaluations if they've had a rough year. One Stanford University economist, Eric Hanushek, estimated that the top teachers help their students gain more than a year's worth of learning. Students taught by the worst achieving teachers have only gained a half a year of learning. I think that is incredibly powerful as an administrator and as a teacher as well. I have been on the latter half of that, and I had a class come to me last year who was low performing compliments of an underperforming teacher, and I literally taught the second half of their kindergarten year while teaching them the first half of their first grade year. This was a huge disservice to me and a huge disservice to those students, and honestly stressed all of us out a lot. The next article that I read was called Teacher Evaluation. This was all about the ESSA Act, and they have ended the federal government's involvement in influencing our evaluation systems. Now, a lot of people don't understand that this doesn't give us rights. This kind of protects the rights that we've already had. This basically says that the Secretary of Education cannot prescribe any aspect of our state's educational system. They require states to develop their own goals and look at broader factors for our school performance. And also, the states may design and implement evaluations and system supports that are based in part on a student's academic achievement, on part of the student's academic achievement, not 50%. Yes, that's on part, but that is a high part. The second part of this article was on bargaining and advocacy. The ESSA savings clause provisions are right preserving, not right creating. I think a lot of teachers don't understand that. If you did not have advocacy or bargaining implications before, you don't have them now. What this is basically is grandfathering in those bargaining and advocacy implications that your district may have already had. They're not going to give you extra. But whether or not your district has those things, I think that a teacher evaluation system should be developed in partnership. Let's say that again, in partnership with our teachers to ensure teachers buy into the process. If evaluations must be meaningful, provide all of our teachers with clear and actionable feedback, and be linked and tailored to, again, professional development. We cannot expect to evaluate somebody on something they have not been trained in. The teacher evaluation lastly talked about implementations and creating of a system. Now, there's several things they said we need to look at. We need to look at students' test scores, not all based on a test score. They need to be adequately funded, fully developed, and validated. To me, this says that you as an administrator need to be trained. You need to be you need to have that inter-rater reliability status. That way, you know what you're doing is fair and is socially just with your staff. Also, you should have a piloted program. You don't want a fly-by-night evaluation system that's going to be here and gone and going to make your staff feel unsupported and unvalued. Improvement plans and due process rights are incredibly important because, again, we are not trying to get rid of teachers with an evaluation. We are trying to support them and help them get better. An improvement plan, should be spelled out for even the most struggling teacher you have. And there must be a process of due rights process so that teacher can find somewhere to go and feel supported even in the worst case scenario. The last article we read was called Teacher Evaluations Head to Court. Now, the policy frenzy to establish new methods for evaluating teachers over the past few years has had an unintended byproduct. That byproduct was litigation. Nobody wants litigation. And several unions and teachers have sued and are currently in the middle of litigations over things such as too much weight on test scores. They don't consider poverty. The scoring weight isn't correct between test scores and teachers' actual performance. There is several things that this article had talked about that weighs out why these teacher evaluations, some of them, have headed to court. In my past district, the evaluation system looked kind of like this. I set it up like the basic clinical supervision model so you guys could kind of get an idea of what we were looking at. The pre-observation was basically a self-eval. We received this by email and had to fill it out and send it back by email as well. The classroom observation was a normal classroom observation. There was no walking around. There was no collection of materials. There was no talking to students. It was strictly sit in a corner, type what he saw. That was it. I don't feel like that is a very valid or whole picture of an observation. I think talking to students and looking at student materials and seeing where they're at and talking to them is a key component also, because if your students don't feel supported, your teacher's not doing their job either. The delivery of notes came to us via email in about 1 or 2 weeks, and there was no discussion on that. It was just literally a blank page. It said, I saw this, you did this, he said this, you said that. Actually, very unusable data in my opinion. And about 6 weeks later is when I had my post-observation conference, which I felt was too long to wait for a post-observation conference because it was no longer fresh in my mind. He didn't ask me anything about how I did or discuss what I did. He gave me back my self-evaluation and asked if I had any questions, and I just looked at him kind of in curiosity as if, what would I have questions on? I filled it out. He asked me if I wanted any professional development opportunities, and talked to me for a while about being a track coach. That was about the gist of my post-observation conference, which I was very, I left feeling very unsupported and disappointed in, because I feel like he values me more as a coach than he did the actual process of observation, and he doesn't buy into it, so why should I buy into it? The last piece, which was the data, post-conference data, he never does anything with. The evaluation and job termination disputes in our district was very informal. We, as a district, if you have a problem with your evaluation, you just go talk to the superintendent and he'll note it and put it in your file. That's basically all you can do. Our evaluations don't affect our pay scale at all, so it's not really an issue for us. The district rarely lets teachers go, but when they do have it, there is a formal process for that. They have to articulate why they feel that their job termination or lack of contract renewal has gone against them. And then the superintendent takes that to the board. The board schedules a meeting with the superintendent. They get all of their paperwork and stuff they need. Then they either invite you to that meeting or they schedule another meeting and have witnesses come in as well if you desire to have them on your behalf. And then you have that meeting with them or the hearing with them. Then they excuse you. They have executive session. And then, having said this before, I'm from an extremely rural community. They have chosen to vote via electronic devices. That way nobody knows who voted where. So there's not that aspect of you said no, why did you say no to me, kind of feel in the hallway. You are later notified by a manner of electronic means that they have talked to you about beforehand. And the process, is this process really helping our teachers, or is it hurting them? As we have seen in several of these court cases, this process may actually be hurting the teachers that it was designed to help. In Rochester and Syracuse, New York, the evaluations failed to fully account for poverty in test score-based formulas used for their evaluations. This ended up penalizing some of their teachers and actually ended up in litigations. Ubansky versus King and Ahern versus King are two of those cases, and the state is currently in the process of dismissing both suits. And there was another one that really stood out to me. There was another case in Tennessee, Trout versus Knox County Board of Education. A teacher missed out on a pay bonus due to a miscalculation of a test score based on her evaluation. Instead of grading the whole school, or being graded on the school-wide performance, which is what they had agreed on, she ended up only being judged on 10 students' performances. This is a huge grievance for me. I cannot imagine as an administrator having something like that happen. For all the energy we have spent putting into this new system, the dividends paid by them are not yet clear. We need to start using common sense. Are we really helping our teachers, or are we pushing them out the door? Things we need to remember as we move on as administrators. Teachers are people. They're going to have bad days. They're going to have bad months. They're going to have bad years. They're going to lose loved ones. This needs to be taken into account and thought of while you're in the middle of this evaluation process. We need to get to know our staff. Just as we expect our staff to get to know their students, we need to get to know our staff in that personal manner so we know what is going on in their lives. We need to use district evaluation systems and tools, and we need to use them properly, and we need to be properly trained on them so we have that inter-rater reliability, so those teachers know that we are fair and we are just and we are not out there to get them. We need to use proper language and open communications with open minds. We need to be mindful of possible problems. So if something is coming down the road, you can thwart it and head it off at the pass. If you know this is going to be a bad conversation, make sure you have a witness, not to catch them in saying something, but it's to protect you, it is to protect your teacher, and it's to protect your district. And that is what we are there to do, just to protect everyone. And last but certainly not least, you need to keep that superintendent in the loop. If you have an angry person coming at your superintendent, they need to be warned so they can be ready if the person is coming their way. This will help them have the time they need to prepare for that possible encounter or confrontation. I find the modules I picked, or the standards I picked for the module this week, I found that PSI Fav 5A is incredibly important. By using this practice, you will ensure that all people involved with your school feel safe and supported. This will bleed through into your evaluation process as well. If you run your school under the practices of social justice, equality, confidentiality, acceptance, and respect between and among your students and faculty within the school, the staff will know that you are there to help them get better, not as somebody who's out to get them. I will actively work, to build a school culture that fosters this supportive environment. I chose ISTE 3B this week because it is a key portion of our evaluation system. As an administrator, we should lead by example. This should include promoting professional developments that will support and empower our educators. Technology today is our link to those students. We as teachers need to be fluent in these tools we use. If we are going to evaluate our staff on something, it should be something that we have provided proper trainings on for them on. Thank you. See you next week.